Good evening. The Who's today, of course, in Sydney. We're on at headquarters. Um, Headquarters, Randwick today, Doncaster Day, Derby Day. Very good roll up inside the main grandstand, the public area. Of course, it was packed because of the rain and the wind outside. Most patrons came inside. So the captains, of course, today wrote a lot more Jiminy crickets than we generally do, because those filthy TAB vans were out on the grass, which were outside the front door when you walked in. They were everywhere. Those tabs, of course, they've got all the those machines that they punch in, which they put real money in apparently. They were everywhere, but the vans out the front, the tab vans were, well, it was they didn't do much business because of the weather, and we captains did manage to write a lot more Jimities today, as I say, than we generally do. We'll get to this meeting in a minute, but just very quickly, during the week, we had a meeting on Wednesday at of course, at Warwick Farm, where we've had heavy tracks all week with the rain in Sydney. It was a heavy 8 at Warwick Farm. The rail was in the normal position, and close to the fence. It was very easy to see wasn't the place to be. The first winner, the 2200 metre race, ridden by Nash. While I had the first and second picks in the race, the right one beat the right one, the wrong one. The favourite won the race. $2.80, given you wouldn't see that in the flux. It was Sagnan. It did, when they went out the straight the first time, Nash let this run astride, and it was 8 lengths clear at one stage. He dictated in front and beat the stablemate by 0.8 of a length. It led and won. The last winner, that was ridden by Nash, and the last winner ridden by Nash, he did very similar what he did, what he's done in the past. He, on the winner there, Fort Sumter, which was very well backed. He velodroned, came across from a wide valley, got control. Runners did get up on his outside turning for home, but he was able to kick on and win. As I say, but he was well off the fence all of the way. You had to be off that fence, off the 18 pence at Warwick Farm on Wednesday to win. There was another runner that led all the way, or was up near the lead. They Cornellaed the race in the sprint race, 1300 metre race 6, Arrowet and Centre Pent. Both of those velodromed from wide alleys as well and got control and were able to hang on, but they didn't go near the fence. Then, of course, we went to Hawkesbury on Thursday, where the track was downgraded from a heavy 8 to a heavy 9. The rail was in the normal position there as well. There was light rain. Oh no, no more for the Avery, please. Is that you, my darling? Liz, I'm just right in the middle of doing this review, so can I ring you back after it? I'll ring you back. All right, darling. All right, bye. Then we well, at Hawkesbury, there was solid rain during race 2, and off and on, as I say, during the day. It was also, you could be up near the lead, but it was close to the fence, seemed to be a little bit inferior at Hawkesbury, so up off the fence was the place to be. There were leaders that got home, but they were off the fence on the turn and steered a course down the middle of the track. There was a runner that did lead and didn't stay too far off the fence, which would have been a huge result for the captains. It would have been just about as big a result as when the tortoise beat the hare, and that was in race 7. A runner called Desha. It led. It was an 80 to 1 chance. It led, and it was only a little bit off the fence, maybe 1 or 2 off, 3 off the fence, turning for home. Got clear, and under pressure, went back towards the fence and only got beat a half a length. So maybe if it would have got a little bit wider, it might have won. But off the fence was the place to be at Hawkesbury, but you could still be up near the lead. Now we got to this meeting at Randwick today, where it was a heavy 9. There was a very strong south westerly wind blowing, which I suppose they ran into it down the back straight, but it didn't have, the wind wasn't didn't have any effect on any results there today. The rail was in the normal position, and the grass was fairly long. They were unable to mow the lawn, mow the grass during the week because of the weather, and it was that extra little bit long today, which of course made the times equivalent to a very heavy track. The first race, we saw on the screen 106.8 offered to those betting on the flux, on the good old flux. They were fairly, there was only one real race today where the flux were, there was a major difference. We'll get to that later. There was a little bit less, about 100, instead of being 106.8, there was about 102.5 in this first race. And we saw the winner come from third last, or Hallowed Crown, who had only had the one start before and won at Randwick, or Kensington track, and it got in between runners. They were, well, it led I'm Snippety. Unfortunately, just as they were coming up the rise, it broke down badly, didn't interfere with any runners. It was pulled up fairly quickly, and they got off the fence before the coming to the turn and coming up the rise. It was able to get in between runners, and it was a fairly strong win, and coming down the outside, the widest runner, but not the widest they travelled in later races, was the second horse, having its first start, Washington Heights, but the winner was a little bit too strong for her, beating it by 1.3 lengths. And well, interestingly, the horse that ran third in the first race as well, the runner that ran third, it came from second last. So the first, second and third in the first race did come from the, were running, they were the last three coming to the turn, or coming down the side at least. The favourite in the race, it ran fourth, it got a good suck, it did knuckle at the start, Donnell, but it seemed to have every chance. In race 2, there are a lot of races here today with the big crowd. One of the replay channel, excuse me, that I generally look at the replays on, it was broken, and there was another, I was looking at them on another screen, a lot of people about, and I couldn't, when the races were on, you couldn't, people don't watch the races, a lot of them in the betting ring. They just stand there yahooing and drinking. They don't even know the races are on when the Derby's on. If you ask most of them, and when the Doncaster's on, do you know what race is on now? Oh, we've had a bet, but we wouldn't know. Are they racing? Are they? They just don't understand. It's a drinker's paradise. This race, the second race, they said there was a 102.7 on the screen, a bit skinny for the robots, 99 in the marketplace. You wouldn't see it on the flux. I think they said it was 280, the best fluck, about Gypsy Diamond. There was 290 given on the fence, and it settled well back in the field after missing the kick slightly, Gypsy Diamond, but it went through the middle of them after they topped the rise, and it was a very, very strong win. It went away and won by 2 lengths at the finish of the race. Beat a well-backed roughie here, Casino Dancer. It was 80s into $81 into $31, Casino Dancer, and it ran a great race. It sat in about 6th position, and and held on very well. And running third was Rock Sturdy, who was placed, sat midfield, a little bit off the track, but with cover. It was very hard to lay. It went from $5 out to $6.50, back into six towards the finish, and more or less had its chance. It also missed the kick slightly, or it jumped awkwardly. The others in that race, they all seemed to have their chance. The winner and favourite, the Avery Gypsy Diamond, who after $2.90 was given, we put it up the 6-4 favourite. 6-4 the field, got out to, as I say, $2.90. At one stage was back into $2.60, very hard to get. Got back out to $2.70 towards the end of betting. And most of the other runners, including the second pick, Rock Sturdy, got out in the market. The second horse, as I say, well backed. Race 3, they said there was a fat 111.3 on the screen. I must admit, there's only about 4 less in the marketplace, about 107. And in this race, we saw Politeness, the winner, trained by the very astute Robert Snowden and ridden by Craig Williams, just join in there down the outside. He knew he had this race won at the 200-metre mark. He drew very wide. There were 1, 2, 3, 4. He drew 18 of 18, and he just let it come out of the barriers by itself. He went back to last position, second last position. When they turned for home, the leaders were well off the fence. It was leading Nuclear Class. It took the runner on its outside. Well, it was the other way around. It was leading. It was leading Nuclear Class, but on its inside, kicking up Dublin Lass. Dublin Lass made the turn a bit awkward and took it a bit wider. Nuclear Class, and it was a fairly bunched field coming to the turn, and the winner simply eased to the outside, travelled up the rise when you watch the replay very comfortably, and then halfway down the straight it was starting to round them up out in, I suppose, the better section of the ground, but still coming very quick. There were plenty of other runners in that race that also got into the best section of the ground, but they didn't win. Where it was able to round them up. It did go away and win by 1.3 lengths at the finish. It ran second in the race, number 11, Cosmic Endeavour, who sat in about 6th or 7th position, having a good run, and coming from just past midfield were Miniature, who went through the middle of them, and one stride for a couple of strides. Miniature, when it was bursting through, going out after getting to the leaders, it looked like it was going to win for sure, but it faltered, maybe just tired a bit the last 100 metres, and after getting past a couple of runners, as I say, faltered, and it finished up running second, Cosmic Endeavour, and Northern Glory ran third in the race. The winner, it was a fairly strong win. The favourite in this race was Northern Glory, and it got into a good position. You wouldn't see it on the flux. $6 was given early about this runner. It was into $4.80 at one stage, got back out to $5, plenty of it, and did have its chance, and that's about all you would say there. I have got to watch there were 18 runners, and I've got to dissect this race again when I watch it tomorrow. Now, this was the worst race percentage-wise, value-wise, for the captains all day. Race 4, they said there was only 99.8 on the screen for the robots. There was a good 4% less in the marketplace, about 95 5.5. I'll give you the flux in this race. Centaurus, it went from $3 out to $4.20. Extremely hard to lay. The offer, the favourite, the Avery, the winner, we put it up a 13 to 8 chance, $2.60. 13 to 8 the field. Now you wouldn't see it, but on the rails out to $2.90. At one stage it was into $2.45. Very hard to get. I was laying at that price towards the end of betting. Got back out to the opening quote $2.60, starting that price. The stablemate to no, not the stablemate. Mr. Waller only had the one runner in this race, Opinion. They said they were going to ride it with cover today instead of leading like they did last start at Rose Hill. It was $5 out to $7 back into $6.50. Hippo Puss was $9 out to $10 back into $9.50. Tree Mac never had a price, $12 out to $18. Desert Journey, 30 out to 40 back into 30. Like a Carousel, 40 into 30. Retort Courteous, 60 into 50. They backed all the roughies in this race. 30 out to 40, Lucky Liaison, back 30 out to 40 back into 30. But as I say, only about 95.5, 96. He sat midfield or in fifth position on this favourite, terrific Tommy Berry. He gave his good brother the signal. He's sitting on his shoulder, of course, every time Tommy rides now. He gave him the signal when he went past the post, and coming down the side, as I say, it was coming down the side. Well, there were a few runners that had swooped up. It made a move, Opinion, and he got. They were well off the rail coming down the side, knowing all of the riders knowing that wasn't the place to be, and also it might have been Lucky Liaison was able to get around him for a couple of strides as well. But then when they were turning, he was very wide and still back in the field. But then as they gradually got up to the top of the rise, he started to come far too quick. It was sitting in fourth position. Sartorius was under pressure. It had a beautiful run, under pressure coming to the turn. And as I say, he was able to, coming up the rise, he slid up to them, and he was the widest runner, and it was quite obvious that he was going to round them up. He did duck back in when they got down towards the winning post, but he won clearly by 2.3 lengths. And next week in the Sydney Cup, if we've got a wet track, the offer is going to be a very, very short odds. He was far too good today. Race 5, they said there was 109.6 on the screen, about 5 less in the marketplace, about 104. Myself and another captain on the fence were $4 when they jumped about Peggy Jean. We paid the penalty. It got from $3 out to $3.80, and on the way out, I laid it constantly. Punters wanted to be on it, and I top dressed myself towards the finish, and I went $4, and I, as I say, paid the penalty very dearly. It did cop a little bit of a check. There were 3 runners that got squeezed up at the start. They were the winner, Peggy Jean, Lucky Raku, who won at Canberra last start, and also the 150 to 1 chance Miss Interiors all got squeezed up at the start. He settled back in about third last position, Nash, on the winner Peggy Jean. It didn't come around them. It went through the high diddle, and it got it and the second horse. The second horse was in front of it coming to the turn, but it also well back in the field, Strike Me Lucky, and they didn't go around them. They went in between them, and they got right away from the others. The margin of the finish between first and second was only a half a length. The winner was backed, 30 out to 40 back into 30. The second horse, I should say, Strike Me Lucky. But the winner, even though it got out in the market, it was there was always good section for it all the way through the betting. I had a very bad result. The run at the start, it finished up, as I say, the margin was only a half a length between it. Scratched me lucky when they hit the line. And after sitting in fourth position, having every chance from barrier one, ridden by the pumper, Cornrow, it was 6.6 lengths away back in third position. First and second got right away from the others. It had every possible chance. Well, it settled well back in the field. Last, actually, believe yourself, the rider saying that it never handled the heavy conditions. It got beat 15.2 lengths. It started favourite. We put it up $3.20, got out to $3.60 and 70, into $3.40 at one stage, and started $3.50, fairly hard to get. But first and second in that race, they had plenty on the others, the winner being the best run by far. Well, not by far, but being the best run. The second horse was also a very good effort. Race 6, here, the Derby. We saw bookies on the screen offer the Fluck Punters 107.6 at top odds in the marketplace, only a couple less, so it was about what it was, 105.5 in the marketplace. And here I paid very dearly again. I had a very bad result on this, with the favourite getting home, Criterion, ridden by Horseman Bowman. Drew barrier one, was on the fence, wasn't the same as when he won at Rose Hill last start. Coming to the turn, during the race, the second horse, Tupac Amaru, was on his outside. The rider saying that it did over race a little bit, and coming down the side where they were sitting in about 7th and 8th position, or 9th, about 7th or 8th, 9th and 10th position, it led the New Zealander again, Puccini, and led clearly at one stage from Surge Ahead, who was made a little bit of use up to get into second place. And down the back, they were a good, there might have been a couple of lengths between that pair, and it was another 4 lengths back to a runner that got trapped very wide all the way from a wide alley, Cadillac Mountain, on its inside, Solo Saga, and another runner inside those. And as I say, sitting back on the fence was the winner from barrier one, Criterion, on its outside the second horse. When they got to about the 800 metre mark, Kieran McAvoy, Clever Kieran, on the second horse, he let it stride. It did run up out wide in the right section of the ground to the leaders, and took the lead before they got to the top of the rise. And when they did get to the top of the rise, he had hit the lead. It sat in about 6th position, hooked, and hooked copped a little bit of a prat at the start, which didn't have any effect, and he was able to get past hooked, and then they sort of got away, but getting off heels and getting a good run when a couple of runners started to fan was the favourite, and it did handle the heavy track very well, like the second and third horses, and ridden by Bowman, showing all of his vigour. It got past Hooked, who fought on extremely well. Tupac Amaru then looked like it was dying on its run, but then came again and beat Hooked for second positions, the margins being 0.4 and 0.4 by 1.2 lengths to the third horse, and they got right away from the others. Savvy Nature, who sat in front of the first pair in about 8th position, it finished up running 4th, beaten 5 lengths. The field, going back to the stragglers, were really, there was, as it turned out, there was, which of course happens all the time on very heavy tracks. The last runner was close to 50 lengths away, that being number 7, Surge Ahead, who, as I say, did spend a no, it wasn't Surge Ahead, it was number 15. Surge Ahead ran second last, and number 15, who also was up near the lead, Solo Saga. It was a 100 to 1 chance anyway, but the first three did get right away. Who else was in the market? It was very well backed. Gallatin from $13 into $9, and it was well in the market as well. Singing Flame, it got trapped a little bit wide in the run at one stage after missing the kick slightly, copped a little bit of a check, but it didn't hang on anywhere as good as its price suggested. The first three being by far the best runs in the race. Then we came to the TJ Smith, and here, well, there was most probably the heaviest rain during any race during the day, during this race, and Lankan Rupee, even though it drew barrier 1, Craig knew it, he took no prisoners. When he jumped, he just got straight away from Buffering, who was on his outside in barrier 2, and he said, even though I'm not a Sydney rider, I know the fence is not the place to be here, and he manoeuvred himself directly off the fence to be a good 6 to 8 horses off the fence coming to the turn, having full control of this race. Buffering was chasing him, getting a good suck in behind that pair was Switzerland, and Tiger Tease was tucked in 4th position. But when they did appear turning for home, you could very clearly see how far Lankan Rupee was off the fence. We've got the advantage of course, these days, the television to see all these things happening. When it comes to bias on tracks, these tracks at Randwick have always been the same. They've been the same for 100 years. They didn't have to dig this track up and do what they did to it all those times. Of course, the media got onto it saying, "Oh, the track's no good." It's always been the same. I remember when I was very young, without going into it, seeing runners come so wide at Randwick, but of course when we got the televised view, we could see what was happening. They thought it was the track was to fault. It was just the inside. Unfortunately, the way the track is cambered, there's more water on the inside where most of the races are run, and it gets chopped up and it's firmer going out wide, and therefore that's where they go, and which has always been the case. And getting back to this runner, when they did appear for home, turning for home, you could see very clearly, of course, how far it was off the fence, a good dozen lengths off the fence, right in the middle of the track, and this race was over, turning for home. He just kept on going, won by 2 lengths. It got into second hole, Rebel Dame, coming from sort of midfield, and Buffering did hold on very well. Margins were 2 lengths by 2.1 lengths. Buffering running third, and it ran 4th, Tiger Tease, after getting a suck in behind the leaders in about 4th or 5th position. Of course, this race, bookies took a big risk with Lankan Rupee. When it trialled here, everybody saw how well it had trialled, and everybody kept on saying if it were a dry track today, this runner would have been closer to evening money instead of the $4.40 about given plenty of it, Lankan Rupee. We put it up $3.60 or $3.70 even. $3.70, it went up 11 to 4 the field. Bookies reached for it very quickly, out to 440. the weight of the general public forced it into $3.80 at one stage of betting. Like a googie egg, I was $4 again when they jumped. I paid the penalty. Um, the second pick here, Gordon Lord Byron. I still haven't seen it. I'll have to watch it tomorrow. They said that it was $5 out to $5.50. It was $6 on the fence when they jumped. I was $6 on the fence when they jumped as well. But the way this race was run, it was the back markers here were never ever going to be able to beat this runner because he had complete control. It could have been a lot different, of course, if he stayed close to the fence, but he was too clever. He was too far off the fence, and they had to make up a lot of ground out wide, which was impossible to do because the winner was already so wide on the track. We got now in that race. Well, that was a difficult look. I won't give you the flux, but they said there was 109.9, nearly 110 on the flux screen, but there was only about 101 in the marketplace. There was a good 8 or 9% less offered by the captains in that place where everyone should be punting. If you're a serious punter, that's where you should be. Don't put your money in those filthy tab machines. You've got no hope. You're taking under the odds all the time. Don't you understand? I know you don't. So anyway, that was that race, the TJ Smith. Now we got to the Donny. On the Donny, the Doncaster, Waller. You've got to take your hat off to Mr. Waller. He trained the first 4 place getters here. Sacred Falls beat the stablemate Royal Descent, beating Weary running third, the favourite, equal favourite, and hopping into 4th hole was Hawkesbury. So that is one for the record books. A very, very big effort. Well, it was written by Zach Purton, the winner. It settled back in 3rd last position near the fence, down the back, coming down the side, travelling well. He eased off. They were well off the fence coming down the side. He didn't go inside runners. He eased off a runner's heels. When they were coming up the rise, he was sucking up very well, and a beautiful split appeared. And when they hit the 200 metre mark, the stablemate Royal Descent, who drew very wide in the race and also came from well back in the field, it was out in the right section of the track, swooping, looming up, looking the winner without a doubt. But then when they started to single away from the field, it was a little bit too strong, Sacred Falls, and beat the stablemate by a half a length. It was 3 lengths back to Weary, who sat midfield off the fence, having its chance, I would say, and coming from well back, just beating 9th Legion for 4th position, as I say, was the other Waller runner, Hawkesbury, and it was 5.5 lengths back from the winner. Messine, it sat in about 6th position, well off the fence. I think, well, if he didn't have cover, he was half karting on it. The rider said that it started to struggle a bit from the 800 metre mark, Messine. And where did it finish up running? Well, it might have finished up running midfield, had beaten a fair way I suppose, having its chance. Uh, it's hard to get away from this race, um, saying that the first pair here were far superior to the others, because at the finish they were just running away from the field, and there was nothing back in the field making up any ground. They did run along at a fairly good bat. Uh, Fat Al, the 100 and or the 200 to 1 chance, the rank outsider in the field, it set the pace with Streamer on its outside. And there are a few other runners there. It was tucked in behind the Malavio from a handy barrier. As I say, Messine wasn't too far off the pace. Dissident, I think, was up there. It was hard to hear the broadcast in the main ring when this was going on, so I'll have to dissect it. I only watched the replay once, but it was quite evident to me, even watching it once, that first and second were by far the best runs in the race. And percentage-wise here, this was as good a race we've had in Sydney for value for the captains for a long time. And even though it was a major race, on the flux screen, they said there was 115.6, which is very, very good these days for the captains, considering you've got that filthy Betfair to put up with, that fair bet, they call it. But in the main ring, it was still good. About 6 less on the in the marketplace. We did get close to 10, about 109.5% at the top odds. But the winner, well, it was very well backed. We put it up a 10 to 1 chance, $11. Got out to, I think I might have seen $13 fleetingly, but there was a mile of $12, and it only started $11, fairly hard to get. Sacred Falls. The two picks in the race, well, in the outside ring they gave $6 about both runners, Messine and Weary, but plenty of $5.50 on the fence for both of them. I think the best fluck about Weary was only $5. Well, a blind man could on the fence. There were 6 boards I saw that were $5.50 Weary. It started the 4 to 1 favourite, and it started 9 to 2 second pick, Messine, and starting the third favourite was El Rocco, who was $10 into $9. El Rocco starting 8 to 1 third pick, and the winner was fourth favourite starting at the $11, 10 to 1. So it was 10 to 1 bar the 3. And then we got to the last race, and well, this when they topped the rise, it was just running up to them, coasting the winner, Arabian Gold. Very well back too, even though it got a bit out in the market, came back in late. On the screen they said there was 110.2, and the marketplace about 6 less, 104. And here we saw I Own the Lead, Annenpaw go straight to the lead. There wasn't a caser for it. $7 out to $10. It led clearly at one stage down the back from Paris Match, who was 26 into 20 at one stage, back out to 26. And the winner sat in about 6th position, getting a cosy run, always off the fence, had an alley to help it do that. Barrier, well, what did it come in? It had barrier 8, and ridden by Bold Blake Shin. As I say, sat in about 6th position, eased off heels, coming up the rise, all travelling extremely well. About 3 runners behind it, or might have been just behind it at one stage, but then could have lost his position, was the very well backed Miss Von, who you wouldn't see, but $7 was given in the outside ring. We put it up the 4-1 favourite. No, we put it up 4-1 second favourite. Second favourite got out to $7, came in and only started $5.59 to 2. It was second pick 9 to 2, and it could have lost its position at one stage, but then it went out. It went out after the winner Arabian Gold, who had got past the leaders fairly easily after they topped the rise and set up the winning break. It did fight on very well, Miss Von, finished inside it, but they were well off the track, beaten 1.3 lengths, and coming from back in the field was the favourite in the race, the visitor from New Zealand, Lady Kumquat, who jumped awkwardly, and then Nash said that it took a little time to settle, did cop a little bit of a check at the start as well. It did find the line very, very well, getting in between runners, and it was beaten 1.8 lengths. And similar to other races, I do think that the first 3 place getters in the last race, although Paris Match, who ran fourth, did stick on very well after sitting up handy, but the first 3 place getters were the best runs in the race. By the same token, they were in the right positions off the fence with cover, I suppose. So that was about the meeting. There was a good roll-up, as I say. We've got plenty of other meetings and plenty of water to go under the bridge before we get back to Randwick next week for the Sydney Cup meeting. And then, of course, that's next weekend is the Easter weekend. And on the Monday, we race on the Kensington track. And all you patrons, try and get up to, on the Monday, try and get to roll up on the Monday and make it a good weekend. It should be a good day. What can I say? The racing technology we have in Sydney, look, we've got to get people to the races instead of, advertising, come out and party and so forth. We are allowed, or you are allowed, people in charge of racing to make it, get intelligent people interested in the racing in Sydney by providing, at least when the replays are shown on course, the people who have got the contract at the moment, they don't know what time of day it is apparently. When they go past the post, they're showing the slow motion replay. Of course, if there are some runners that are well back in the field, they don't even wait until they get past the post, so you can't see where they're being eased down or whatever. You've got to actually watch the race live when you do the tape, but it's handy to watch them go past the post in the slow motion replay. And also, of course, wouldn't it be great, as I say, I think it'd get a lot of, you might get some young people interested when they see the technology that they have in Singapore, if it were available here and in Hong Kong, in the run where you see all the numbers in exactly the right position, just not the first 4, the people who are in Sky Channel and they're punching in, of course, the runners, the first 4 or 5 runners who are in the run, they get it wrong that many times, it's not funny. The technology over in Hong Kong and Singapore, apparently, they have the chips on the saddle cloth, and you can see not only if they're leading, but whether they're on the fence or they're 3 wide. The runners that are they are in their actual positions, not only whether they're running first, second, or third, but the positions on the track, whether they're on the fence, out wide, in between runners, and it makes things not only so much easier for people doing the form, but it makes it, I think, a lot more interesting for you might get people's attention to get involved in this game, and that's what we need. We don't need drinkers at the racetrack, we need punters. The whole game is about turnover. You've got to start finding a way to get people to bet, and especially at the track where the value is by far far the best for all of the punters to be punting it. You're mad if you're betting anywhere else. Open up an account, with bookies. Open up an account with me. It's on my website, but you should be at the track so you can do your own shopping, and you'll find that you'll be more successful and survive longer in the game if you do come to the track and you treat the punt seriously. Good evening.